Claire in the beautiful downtown L.E. Phillips Memorial Library. I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and with me as usual is my rusty and trusty sidekick, Fred Feeling Better Stafford.
Howdy.
Glad to see you again, Fred.
Oh there, Chuck.
Now last week you were a little bit under the weather and it kind of showed up in your looks a little bit, but now you're back to normal again.
Yeah.
What was it anyway?
Well, originally the doctor at the Sacred Heart's emergency room there told me I had a stomach flu.
Stomach flu, yeah.
And I couldn't keep anything down.
Well,
Even water.
You know, you're one of the lucky ones, Fred, because the obituaries were just packed full of people during that period. I'm telling you, that flu, you know, that's one of the main killers of people in this country, Fred, is that flu. And it goes unnoticed because it's usually older people, the people that are their loved ones know it, but I mean, it just kind of sweeps through neighborhoods and through the older communities, doesn't it, Fred?
Mm-hmm.
I know you can attest from experience all the times you got to go to these funerals and be in the color guard.
In the firing squad.
Firing squad. Sometimes you go 2 or 3 times a week, don't you?
Well, no. Twice is, we don't usually get called that often.
Well, that's good. Glad to hear it. All right. Well, Fred, there's some important news today. And if you haven't heard by now, Jeffrey Dahmer is dead. I think he was in his early 40s, Fred, wasn't he? Something like that?
Yeah.
He was attacked in his prison in the recreation area of the prison he was in Wisconsin and murdered. And yes, that's right, folks, he was murdered. Whether we like it or not, even though he took the lives of people, somebody took his life, and now they are should be brought to trial and punished for that, Fred.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Well, I don't agree with somebody else doing that. If anything, I would rather have seen the courts do it.
Yeah.
We don't have capital punishment in our state.
Well, it's not because Dave Zine didn't try.
No, he tried, but the legislators down there are kind of soft on that. They're a little mixed up.
Well, you know, Fred, they've got no excuse now. They've got a Republican governor who says he's interested in the death penalty in a few cases, and they've got Prosser who said he's interested in the death penalty for child killers and police. And you've got they've got control of both houses and the governorship down there now. So let's see if they're going to do something or they're just going to soft pedal and kind of float for the next 2 years. It's very easy now for them to be in the majority, to be paralyzed and not want to do anything. That's really sad because it's a lot harder to govern than it is to try and fight from the bottom. And these people have never been in positions of power, Fred. They've always been the underdogs.
Well, you know, what you say may be true, but not all Republicans are in accord on this particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I know of one man who ran recently for the state assembly, and he is opposed to the death penalty.
You know, Fred?
And I don't agree with him.
Oh, well, Prosser was against it till, I guess he clarified things just before the election and said he would be in the case of child killers because of the Cora Jones case. Well, that guy now has admitted that he's done it. I guess he wants to get in under the wire there, Fred, before they slip a death penalty in because he doesn't want to be one of the first ones to get fried under that provision there.
I wish that some more information came out in the papers in relation to those deaths, and particularly about Cora Jones. What happened to Cora Jones? And it seems to have been blacked out of the media.
Yeah, Fred, you heard some inside information about that. I guess the guy killed her in his own apartment. They found carpet fibers on her body that matched the carpets in his room, but from the information you were getting when you're down there was no blood left in her body. She'd been stabbed so many times.
Yeah, it's quite right. And there were sticks stuck into her body pointed sticks,
Well, you know,
a number of them.
they should have a program right now, Fred, nationwide, where everybody that's committed a murder can turn themselves in and get life in prison instead of the death penalty. They should have a date, say June 1st, 1995, by the time that they can turn themselves in, and then after that time, they get found guilty, and then they're shot by a firing squad within 3 days of being found guilty. What do you think about that?
Well, I think maybe that would be a little drastic. Just in case if a guy was not guilty, I'd give him a little more time than that. But here I saw a guy on, was it on 60 Minutes? He had been 8 years in prison, and he decided not to fight it anymore. But his attorneys, some I should say attorneys group, they were carrying on the fight as if he didn't say anything at all. He said, I was guilty, I did it, I deserve to be punished, and let's get it over with.
You're so true, Fred. Well, Fred, we got to switch things here for a second now, and we're gonna be going to our esteemed guest, and he's going to bring us up to speed on the this thing that's going on in Washington. You know, tomorrow, Fred, the Congress is going to convene under what they call a lame duck session, and there's 90 people in the House and Senate that got defeated that are going to be voting on this special bill, and it's called GATT. And we're going to have a special guest. His name is Dr. Schmock, and he's going to give us his word on the GATT treaty and what he thinks about it. And I think he's even got an 800 number for us, Fred. So we're going to go now to Dr. Schmock.
Hello, folks.
Boy, isn't he good looking?
I'm very pleased to be with you all here today. This is quite a storm you've had here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Dr. Schmock. So true.
I almost didn't make it here. I don't know if they have snow removal equipment in Eau Claire, Wisconsin or not. I haven't seen too much of it. I had the misfortune of my rental car going in the ditch, and a nice Eau Claire motorist got chains and pulled me out. James Rainey of Eau Claire, I believe it was.
Where were you coming from?
Well, I was traveling cross country from Chicago. Was my last stop, and that was a mess down there. I'll let you know.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Was a lot of water and freezage down there?
Yes, very much water. It's a torrential downpours for hundreds of miles, and you really don't encounter much snow until you arrive right here in Eau Claire. You folks sure do have a way of being blessed with the snow.
Well, now exactly where are you from, Dr. Schmock?
I'm from far, far away, another time and another place. I like to keep that rather confidential, so I'm not bothered by you people.
Well, I'm glad to see you there. Glad to see you feel that way. Well, Dr. Schmock, before you give your important information on the GATT treaty that's coming up, we always like to ask the guest a question and see if we can stump the stars. You're today's star, so we're going to ask you a question from this date in history, and of course today is November. What is today anyway, Fred?
Isn't it 28th?
All right, yeah, today is November.
All day.
Today is November 28th, 1994. But we go back in time, Fred. We go down through the portholes of time to dig up these questions and see if we can stump the stars. And I know, Fred, you're batting well over 1,000 now. But this one we're going to give to our guest. Today's question, Dr. Schmock, from far, far away is, let's see. We got to give him a tough one, Fred, because he's a guest. Let's see how intelligent these foreigners are. You aren't by any chance an illegal alien, are you?
I prefer not to comment on that, please, Mr. Lee.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see now. Okay. Yes, let's see if he can get this one, Fred. You think he knows anything about... Well, we better not ask him that one. Okay, in 1942, on this date, a nightclub in Boston, 487 people are killed in one of the worst fires in the United States. Boston, Massachusetts. What's the name of the bar there where all these people ran around in confusion and the plastic that was burning and everything and the smoke killed 487 people on this day 52 years ago?
Boy, that was a terrible fire. I believe that nightclub was called the Flame.
I think it was called the Palm Gardens.
Well, nobody asked you, Fred.
Oh.
It's a good thing they didn't. You can retain your 1,000% batting average. Well, unfortunately, Dr. Schmock, from many, many miles away, had the wrong answer, Fred. It's the Coconut Grove nightclub in Boston.
Coconut Grove.
I don't know how 487 people can die in a nightclub, Fred, but they did it.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the booze they were drinking. It was during the war. You probably remember that, Fred. Of course, you were off the coast in New York, guarding the New York Harbor, were you? During that period, 1942, November?
Yeah, I was there.
Well, Boston's kind of up the road there a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, to 150 miles or so.
Okay, well, sorry about that, Dr. Schmock. Maybe you're not too familiar with American history.
Really, I am not too familiar, but I look forward to learning from you all.
Okay, well, what's your message on the GATT treaty there, Doctor?
Well, I wish people, they seem to be very confused about GATT, and I have an 800 number I would like to give to your listening audience out here in the universe. And please call this number so you can become more informed as to exactly what's coming down. This is a monumental change to our global society and economic well-being. I have my own personal views, but I believe that you folks should determine by yourself rather than from my influencing you. That number, folks, get that pen and paper ready. I'll repeat it twice. Is 1-800-929-GATT. And that again is 1-800-929-GATT. G-A-T-T. And I sure appreciate you allowing me to come on your program, Mr. Lee, and explain to the folks the importance of this new GATT treaty. It's going to have monumental changes upon the earth, and I hope that you people influence your great leaders in Washington to vote the right way on this new treaty.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Schmock.
Has Congress held any hearings on this?
Well, from what I understand, Fred, everything is going to start boiling tomorrow. And of course, you know, Robert Dole, who's poised to be what's he going to be, Fred? He's going to be the head of the Senate.
Yeah. And you know that GATT breaks the budget by $30 billion?
Well, you know, Fred,
The loss in taxes?
all Dole was worried about was the capital gains tax, so he cut a deal here even before Thanksgiving saying that he would throw in the towel. Just here, he said, twist my arm, and so somebody went up and twisted it like that, and he gave in on the GATT issue. So he's with the president on that. I guess they're having some kind of pep rally yesterday or today on it. And, of course, Newt, the salamander Gingrich, he's for it, Fred, because he's an internationalist, and he doesn't mind selling out portions of the United States sovereignty. But we've got some good allies on the other side of it, Fred. Now, that 1-800 number, 929-GATT, G-A-T-T, that number is to call your senator or your House of Representatives, your congressman or woman, and air your feelings on this thing. Now, GATT is going to give us more low-paying jobs in this country. They're bragging about how many jobs it's going to create, Fred. So you know what kind of jobs it creates? Minimum wage jobs.
Well, I have been visiting some of the chain stores around Eau Claire, and I find that they have lots of shirts and clothing from overseas, primarily Asia, although they have some from Central and South America, that formerly were made in the United States, and even some of them are name brands. But when you look on the label, where's it made? It's not made in the United States.
You know, Fred, I bought some light bulbs out of Menards the other day. I took them home and was going to wrap them and put them under the Christmas tree to give them as a gift. And what do you know? I looked at the fine print, and you know where them light bulbs were made?
Korea?
The Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Now, don't they have slave camps up there still?
Well, I haven't heard that they got rid of them.
They're right behind the United States in the number of prisoners held that they admit to. The United States keeps good numbers. They're kind of like Nazi Germany. They keep track of everything, and they keep good numbers on the number of prisoners that we have being held in this country. But Russia kind of lies about the figures, so they could have they could have 1 million slave prisoners over there that we don't even know about.
Well, the AFL-CIO used to keep tabs on that and did a fine job.
Now, China is another slave master. They've got millions of people in slave labor, and some of you people out there are wearing clothes and shoes made by slave labor from China. And you're cutting your own throat, because I used to be a union shoemaker, and the shoe industry in this country's about had it. Back in the 60s, Fred, you could travel around the country and move from one shoe factory to another as a union shoemaker. Dr. Schmock, were you ever involved in the shoe business?
Oh, heavens, no.
You're not a foreign shoe salesman or something, are you?
No, but I have to agree with Fred. I've done a little shopping here this morning in Eau Claire, your many fine stores, and I find it rather chilly here in Bayern, and I purchased a sweater at one of your local department stores, and I happened to look in the label, and it was made in China, and this was from J.C. Penney Company. Now, you'd think that would be a good American store where you would want to market American products.
Well, you know, Dr. Schmock, that sweater goes good with your face.
Well, thank you very much. The
You know,
color's
we got to
nice.
take a call here. I think somebody might want to talk to you. You never can tell. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi there, how you doing?
Fine.
I wanted to ask you what you thought about that TV show Beavis and Butthead on MTV and how it affects America's youth.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the call. You know, Fred, that Beavis and Buffcoat, you know, there was one of them U.S. senators that was talking about that bunch the other day. Now, maybe Dr. Schmock has some feelings on it. He's from far, far away, and we can get a unbiased opinion from Dr. Schmock on that Beavis and Buffcoat.
Well, in my land, we do not devote very much time to pleasures such as television watching.
You must be from far, far away. That's all I can say. All right, Fred, what do you think about Beavis and Buffcoat? Have you ever seen that?
I turned them off a few times. Is that only on MTV?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't have MTV, but I've seen something. I thought there must be another one, but I've turned it off every time I catch it. But you're talking about prisoners of war, etc. POW returns after 43 years, and this is from the New American Magazine, which is located in Appleton, Wisconsin. In 1951, Cho Chang-ho was a second lieutenant in the South Korean Army, and he was captured during the Korean War, spent 13 years in North Korean prison, and the next 30 years sentenced to back-breaking work and hardship in the North Korean coal mines. According to an Associated Press report, the 60-year-old Cho, quote, said he escaped after he became too ill to work and was sent to a remote area to live.
He was in the coal mines, wasn't he?
Yeah.
No
In
telling.
other
I mean,
words, 43 years.
you know, over there in Poland and Russia, there's coal mines and different kinds of mines for different kinds of minerals. No telling how many American prisoners of war were shipped out of Vietnam and North Korea, South Korea, when they overran parts of South Korea and took prisoners. And even after World War II, there was something like 20,000 Americans that never made it back when they were released at the borders there.
How many of the more than 1,000 of the U.S. POWs and 8,000 MIAs, of which General James Van Fleet estimated a large percentage were still alive in August 1953, are still alive in captivity?
We need to debrief this guy and see if he met any, if he saw any Anglo-Saxons or African Americans over there with him in those coal mines up there, Fred. Be interesting to see if, I'm sure the CIA and the FBI are debriefing this guy.
Well, I don't know. I don't have a great deal of faith in the administration of our government and what they're doing. And I would think that they would rather let that lie, not pay any attention to it.
Well, Fred, did you notice where Senator Jesse Helms, who's going to be the next chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senate Foreign Relations Committee, you notice where he made some, at first they sounded like threats, but then he backpedaled when Dolan and them got in his case. But he made some statements about Clinton better not come into his part of the country, and if he does, he better have a bodyguard.
On the military bases, yes. I saw that, and I rather, I confess that I admire and respect Jesse Helms. I know he's not trying to sell America out as some of the political con men that we send to Congress are doing.
Well, he, of course, the Secret Service jumped right on that because they don't want people with visibility like that saying things like that, because it gives some of the people with a few screws loose up there. It starts making the gears in their head start clicking, and they start thinking in terms of assassination and stuff. So we don't want that going on.
We don't want that going on, is right.
And before that, I guess he made some other statements about how Clinton wasn't fit to be the commander-in-chief. Now, I think he's a little closer to hitting the nail on the head there.
Yes.
Okay, Fred. Now we're going to ask Dr. Schmock what he thinks about that. What do you think about President Clinton and his job as president, and that some of the things he's been involved with in the Whitewater Gate and all that? What do you think about that, Dr. Schmock?
Need I say more?
Well, thank you very much. Okay, Fred. Since you're batting 1,000, Freddie, we're going to give you a question here. See if you can keep up. You're into the World Series now, Fred. You're still the only baseball game in the United States going here that's batting 1,000. So we're going to ask you a tough one here and see if we can throw you off here, Fred. Okay, the date was 1929, Fred. Now you should remember that. That wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
And it was probably right after the stock market crash.
Yes.
November 29th. When did the stock market crash? In October of 29?
I'm not quite sure.
Somewhere in there. Well, how old were you in 29?
12 years old.
All right, you should remember this then. Every kid your age is thinking about this when they heard about it on the radio and watched it on TV, 1929. A year and a day after successfully leading an expedition to the South Pole, this man makes the first successful flight over the South Pole. So I guess he first went by foot, and then he come back and flew over.
Was that Admiral Byrd?
That's right, Fred. You're still batting 1,000. Lieutenant Commander Richard E. Byrd. 1929, Fred.
Yes. Long time ago.
Sure was. I'm sure the TVs weren't as good as they are today.
They didn't have any.
Well, Fred, you know, a lot of people say that Abraham Lincoln was an atheist. You got this We got a call on line one, so please stay on there. Here's a big full-page ad that was in the November 23rd issue of USA Today, and it's a picture of Abe Lincoln. And the thing about it is, Fred, you know, some people say that he was agnostic or an atheist, but here's what Abraham Lincoln said in 1863, in an 1863 proclamation.
Mm-hmm.
We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no other nation has ever grown. But we have forgotten God. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and preserving grace. Too proud to pray to the God that made us. Abraham Lincoln, 1863.
Good man.
That sounds like the words of a Christian to me, Fred. I think that was right around when the Proclamation Declaration was given out during the Civil War, when he freed the slave, Emancipation Proclamation. All right, Fred, I think we've got a call on line one, so we better get to it. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, so I was wondering, don't you think there should be just as many ATV trails in the state of Wisconsin as there are snowmobile trails? And I was wondering, what's Fred eating over there?
Well, let's take the second question first. Fred, exactly what are you eating? I heard
I
the
just
rustling.
took a cough drop.
Okay, that, because some people accuse you of chewing cud on the show since it's called the Cow Report.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to dispel that rumor right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a cough drop. So you still have the remnants of that cold, huh? Okay, all right. Now, what was the first question again?
Don't you think there should be just as many ATV trails in the state of Wisconsin as there are snowmobile trails?
Okay.
Seeing as the taxpayers are paying the money for them?
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go to Dr. Schmock for that question. Dr. Schmock, what do you think about all these ATV trails out there?
Well, I think that's wonderful. You should have more. As I said, I've had great difficulty arriving at your studios this afternoon. In our home area, we have unlimited access to extraterrestrial trails.
Exactly, what kind of, have you ever rode one of them ATVs? Dr. Schmock.
Well, maybe you could explain to me what ATVs are.
There, Fred, we caught him, Fred. He's not from this country.
Yeah.
Are you from Slovakia or somewhere like that over there, or what?
Well, the actual original origins of myself would, well, actually, I'm from my mother, originally.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know they had those over there. Okay, Fred. You gave me a letter there a minute ago. What exactly do you have there, Fred?
Well, this is from the American Cause, which Pat Buchanan puts out. In it, he says that GATT creates world government. GATT, in its first 20 pages, the blueprint for a powerful new global authority called the World Trade Organization. It is, there is a critical component of, this is a critical component of the globalist New World Order. WTO is authorized by GATT treaty, if it passes, to directly challenge U.S. federal, state, and even local laws. Yet in the WTO, the United States will have only one vote out of 123. Mauritania, for instance, would have one vote with much lower population, while Europe gets 30 votes, Africa 35. WTO will be a surrender of U.S. sovereignty since Jimmy Carter's Panama Canal Treaty, the greatest surrender.
Okay, I wanted to get back to that before we take another call here. Of course, the number is 839-5067. That is the cow phone number. And this program is coming to you live from the beautiful downtown L.E. Phillips Memorial Library on this snowy day. And I guess we got about 6 inches of snow out there, didn't we, Fred? Something like that? Wet snow.
I would say at least 6 inches.
We want to warn people now, when you're out there shoveling snow, to be careful, because this stuff is wet, it's heavy, and you can exert yourself too much. And there's somebody out there that's watching, listening to this right now. We're trying to prevent you from having a heart attack, because we want you to continue to watch the show into 1995, and we don't want you to fall over dead out there. It's dangerous out there shoveling, so take many breaks. and get your wind. And like I say, this stuff's heavy, so don't overexert yourself out there. You can with the colder weather, you kind of fool yourself into thinking you're feeling good there until all of a sudden you've overexerted yourself and you fall over with a coronary thrombosis. Now, back to this ATV deal here. I'll tell you what I think about these ATV trails and these bike trails and these foot trails and stuff. Sure, the land was, most of that land, Fred, was old railroad tracks that they tore up, and and then the train, then the states and the counties and stuff have bought that land and made it into trails. What I think is that it shouldn't be segregated just to one population because everybody's paying for it through their taxes. So they should segregate it out in days and weekends where one weekend is going to be for snowmobile trails, and maybe the next weekend for ATV trails in the summertime. Also in the wintertime, you can have the trails a couple of days a week used for cross-country skiing. It shouldn't just be for the snowmobile trails only because the caller is right, it's taxpayers' dollars. It should be spread out evenly. But even more than that, Fred, I'd like to see the whole thing privatized. I don't know why the government's involved in it to begin with. It's just another way of creating more tax burdens for the overburdened taxpayer. And Fred, you know, that reminds me, before we take this call, today I saw a meter maid. What was unusual, there was another meter maid in the back seat with her chalk, and she was leaning out the back seat window while the other meter maid was driving. That's really sad, isn't it, Fred? We're paying all those tax dollars, two people to do the job of one, and actually they shouldn't even have one person doing it. I think it's ridiculous to pay someone $20,000, $30,000 a year to go around and market tires with chalk.
Yeah.
It's just part of the government mafia, Fred.
I think you're right there, Chuck, and that's one of the reasons why many people don't come downtown to Eau Claire. They don't have to pay any parking fees to go to the shopping centers around Eau Claire, so that's where they go.
Yeah, just another way of fleecing the taxpayer. And we're paying for them to do it. Okay, go ahead, caller, you're on the air. Sorry we made you wait a little while there.
That's all right. I'd like to make a comment first on the ATV snowmobile trail issue. A lot of the trails are privately maintained and owned. A lot of them go through private land. And I think what the caller was talking about was the Wisconsin State ATV trails. And as far as that issue is concerned, I just want to let you know that a lot of it's private and a lot of it is done through the clubs themselves. But the question I wanted to ask you is, I wanted to ask Fred what he thinks about the Hmong gangs in Eau Claire and how they're rising up, and what he thinks the police, if anything, are going to do to deal with them.
Okay, thanks a lot, caller. What do you think about those Hmong gangs, Fred? It's, or just gangs in usual?
I'm not sure we have what you really call a gang problem here, a Hmong gang problem in Eau Claire, but I can see where some of the Hmong kids have had to get together because some of the white boys are picking on them. So the only thing that they could do is get together and, if you want to call them a gang, to do so, to defend themselves. That's right. That's what they have done. But I think we've got to reach out to the Hmong population.
Well, we've got
Many of them are here not because they wanted to be here, but because we failed to win the war in Vietnam.
Well, Fred, we got about 5% of the population in this area is Hmong. They're not going anywhere. They're not going back to Cambodia. Quite a few of them now are American citizens. A lot of them were born into this country, so they're citizens as soon as they're born. And we're going to have to start having some, opening some more doors in that area. And you're right, Fred. The Hmong tend to be smaller in stature, so it's easy for the white kids to pick on them even when they're in high school, and the kids do group together in the gangs to protect themselves, and I don't think it's fair just to single it out to Hmongs because there's probably some white gangs in the area too.
I'd be more concerned about the other gangs that we have.
Well, I think we should, I would like to see more work being done in that area as far as trying to work together and get those groups together and have them do some more interactive type activities together. Integrate some of these Boy Scout troops and Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, and
well, there is a Scout troop, I believe, with Hmongs only.
And I'm sure the schools the schools know who the ones that are having trouble, the white kids and the Hmong kids, so possibly they can start having groups where they can get those two groups together and have them discuss these things out and have a sounding board so they can dispel some of the rumors and some of the innuendos and lies and stuff that get thrown around, because it's very easy to just blame it on the Hmongs when it might not even be a Hmong person involved. And I personally know a Hmong minister here in town. Somebody took spray paint and sprayed his van with yellow spray paint on his windows and stuff. And we don't need that kind of behavior. I mean, we're all in this thing together. Okay, we're going to take another call here, Fred. We've got some people eagerly awaiting. And so let's not make the Hmongs into the scapegoats. And Dr. Schmock, you're a alien and a minority. What do you think about that?
About what, Chuck?
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead, caller. You're on line one.
Yeah, Chuck, maybe if we took this money that we're paying these extra meter maids and use it for some activities for the kids, we wouldn't have so much problems with that.
Well, you know, you can look at governments. They're kind of like mafia. You know, they use the taxing powers to push people around like this landmarks thing. Mark Lewis, the president of the Eau Claire City Council, he rigged a committee a few months back and stacked it with people that were pro-landmark. And then this committee came up with these glorious ideas about how to get people pulled back into landmarks after over 100 people that owned houses in the landmarks areas opted out when Lorraine Lee successfully had the landmarks thing thrown out a couple years back. Well, Mark Lewis, he decided in his own lack of wisdom to bring that issue back up, but he was a little more coy about it. He created this committee and stacked it with pro-landmarks people. Well, then recently the landmarks committee came up with their ideas of how to pull people back into this thing, and it's an over-abuse of the taxing authority of the government, and they're using the police powers and taxing to put the thumb on the taxpayer and say, not only are we going to screw you out of taxes by overtaxing your property, but then we're also going to squeeze a little harder, push a little harder, and we're going to make you put the right kind of windows in and the right kind of siding and stuff like that. And it's totally unconstitutional. Hopefully somebody, an attorney out there, will get on that and sue Mark Lewis for a couple $1 million for pulling that stunt that he did, and sue the city council for illegally forcing people unconstitutionally into doing things with their own property. Now, so what do you think about that, caller?
Well, yeah, I agree with you completely. I hope somebody does do something about that.
So these cities can become mafias, and if you don't think so, just see what happens if you quit paying your taxes on your property. They'll come in and take it away from you, just like the mafia does.
Yeah.
And they might even come in and break a few arms as they're escorting you out of your own property.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. Well, thank you.
All right.
Well, that's quite true. You know that if I owned property, and I don't own any property at the present time, I wouldn't want somebody to tell me what I could or could not do with that property, as long as I was doing something that was legitimate, living in it or whatever.
Well, Fred, all you own is a piece of paper saying that you own title to that property. It's proof when the government comes and takes it away from you that you don't own it, and they tax you on it every year if you own it for 50 years, you get taxed for 50 years. Mm-hmm. Some people to this day are paying more now per month in taxes on their property in Eau Claire than they did 50 years ago in rent or in house payments when they first bought the house. Now they say they've got the house paid off. Say they were paying a 30-year mortgage. They bought a house in 1964. Now this year they paid it off, Fred. 30 years ago they might have been paying $100 a month. Well, today, on that same piece of property,
might have been paying $100 a year.
Okay, today, Fred, 30 years later, they might be paying $200 a month for the taxes on it.
More than that.
Yet,
unless they were living in a small home.
The power to tax is the power to destroy. That's exactly what the taxing authorities in this area are doing, especially to the older folks. They're pushing them out of their own homes through over-taxation, and hopefully they'll realize that. And, of course, remember, spring elections are coming up, and there's 6 people on the Eau Claire city council that can lose their jobs real quick, including Mark Lewis, who rigged the landmarks deal and pushed that back on down the throats of people in those districts. Whoops. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air. Whoops. Okay, Fred. Now, Dr. Schmock, what do you think about the burden of taxation? Do you have that where you're from?
Well, I believe you people have a misunderstanding there. I'd like to correct you if I could, Chuck. You people here in this land, you do not own your homes. All lands and structures thereon are owned by your government. And I believe they perpetrated a great fraud upon you. You were only, you might say, renting these homes you say that you own or are buying. This holds true in many areas. Your automobiles, you do not own these automobiles. You do not have title. You only have certificates of origin. We have to help you people here in America to get back where your founding fathers had created a country for you people. This government has become an octopus upon you, and you've become slaves to these, well, it's primarily the bankers of the world that are controlling you here. You must open your eyes.
Well, thank you, Dr. Schmock. And that is spelled S-M-O-C-K, I think.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's an unusual name. What origin is that? From what country is that?
It is not a country.
Just checking. I thought I could sneak that in there and catch him, Fred. But those foreigners, I'll tell you, they're pretty slick, especially if he's an illegal alien. We haven't ascertained that yet. All right. We're going to see if we can catch him this way, Fred. We're going to ask him one of these questions. See if he knows this one. He didn't do too good on the last one. Let's see if he knows anything about football, Fred. November 27th, 1966. An NFL record 9 points after touchdowns in a game are kicked by this man of the Washington Redskins. What was his name? Dr. Schmock.
Washington Redskin, the only one I know of, Chuck, would be Geronimo. He was a famous Indian, was he not?
You can tell he hasn't been around very long, Fred.
Thorpe?
I'm glad you weren't asking it either. It was a guy named Charlie Gogolak. 1966, Fred. 28 years ago. All right. I don't know if we got a caller waiting, but okay, Fred, we're going to go back to you now, and I know you got a little short story there. What do you got?
Well, from the Family Research Council, which Gary L. Bauer is president, the Clinton administration continues to push behind the scenes to put homosexuals serve openly in the military. Believe it or not, September the 9th, Defense Department's new gay lesbian employees group, GLOBE, sponsored a Celebrate Diversity Day. Senior officers were urged to sit through films such as On Being Gay, a grossly biased account of the origins of homosexuality. It is hard to imagine a more perverse use of our hard-earned tax money.
Well, that's for sure, Fred. They're trying to force this down. You know, Fred, 98.5% of the people in this country are heterosexual. That 1.5%, they're trying to push them down everyone's throats and say they're trying to get in everyone's face and saying, look at us, and we want special rights. Special rights breeds contempt, Fred, and it's going to cause people to lose their lives.
And yet our media here in Eau Claire has not publicized the fact that on December 10th, 1989, St. Patrick's Cathedral was invaded by thousands of homosexuals who shouted, cursed, threw condoms over the congregation, desecrated the communion host, and tried to attack the Cardinal, John O'Connor.
That was in New York City, wasn't it?
In New York City. And they also did it in Brooklyn, in the cathedral in Brooklyn, and in Rockville Center, Long Island.
Okay, we got a call on line 1. I think we do here. We're going to try. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
My question's for Dr. Smock.
All right.
All right, what kind of genitalia does Dr. Smock have?
Yeah, I think that's, he wants to know exactly what part of Europe you're from. Dr. Smock.
That question stuns me. I would say he should go first.
Well, you look like you're contemplating the issue there, Dr. Smock. You aren't any relation to Dr. Spock, are you?
I'm not familiar, no.
Okay. Boy, that sweater sure does go with those ears of yours.
Well,
You know?
thank you.
You're better color coordinated than Fred is today.
Well, I don't know about that. He's quite coordinated.
Well, Betty makes sure Fred just right down to his shoelaces is on top of that situation. All right, Fred. Well, once again, Dr. Smock,
Yes.
can you tell the people once again about this phone number and what it's all about, and this 800 number? You want to read it again there too, if you got
Yes. Please get that pen and paper out. This is of great importance to your world. Each of you individually, your lives will be affected greatly by the GATT Treaty. And to get more information and to voice your opinion to your world leaders, call 1-800-929-GATT. That's 1-800-929-GATT. G-A-T-T. And again, thank you so much, Chuck, for allowing me to come on your show and get this word out to your people.
Well, just hold on there a minute, Dr. Smock. We're going to take a call here, and we still got a few minutes left of the show. I think I'm beginning to figure out who you are, so just hang on here a minute. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Okay.
Do we have a central subject we're discussing today? I just turned you on, and I had something I wanted to bring out and maybe get some discussion going. I don't know if it was about GATT. I'm not really into GATT.
Yeah, go ahead.
What to say? Oh, I want to talk about health care. You know, that's a national subject here. And when Clinton, he ran on his platform basically saying that we want to take care of health care, make it affordable for everybody. But I have yet to hear anybody, any elected politician or anybody running for office, deal with the real issue of health care and the skyrocketing costs. And that is this: the single most contributing issue to the cost of health care is lawyers. The cost of lawyers and subsequent litigation. If you want to really see people get serious about bringing down the cost of health care, then what you do is you start getting a hold of your bar associations and letting the people that set the fee scales and everything, let them know you've had enough. We're getting tired out here of paying such high insurance rates on everything. Product liability, the liability on your house insurance, your car insurance. Every facet of liability insurance there is so high for one single reason, and that is because of litigation, which is brought by people who have been injured by a certain defective product or a car accident, and instead of getting, maybe you've got a case worth $1 million, but a lawyer will take and make it into a $3 to $5 million lawsuit. And then all of those people who pay insurance premiums to that company that's going to have to pay that judgment out are going to have to pay increased premiums. And right now there's no mechanism, there's no pay scale which limits that. And I think that if somebody wants to get serious about lowering the cost of health care in this country, along with all your other insurances, it's time to devise a pay scale which says you've got a case worth $1 million to properly compensate somebody that's going to have injuries, say, that'll last a lifetime, and it's worth, say, $1 million. Fine, I have no problem with that. But where a lawyer can come in and take that same claim and make it into $3 to $5 million, and then themselves walk away with $1 to $2 million, to me, that's just plain greed. And this country, I think, has had enough, and people are going to have to start putting the pressure on, start writing to the different bar associations. Let them know we've had enough. We want to bring the cost of everything down. The cost of your cars, the cost of your homes, the cost of your clothing. Everything is directly related to that. And I would like to hear people out there
who are maybe as angry and frustrated as I am, start wanting to do something about it. And maybe at some point we can start telling these people, here's how you can do something about it. That's what I've got to say for today.
Okay, well, thanks a lot,
Can I
caller.
have something to say there?
All right, yeah, Fred.
You know that 25% of the cost of health insurance, our health care system, is, you can blame that on the state and federal regulations. They have to hire employees they may not need, and as well as fill out all kinds of forms. And if you want to go down to your doctor's office and ask the doctor, how many people did he have 10 or 15 years ago in his office filling out forms? How many does he have today? And why does he have to have 4 where he only had 1 in the past?
Well, you know, Fred, Dave Zine's been running around for years saying tort reform, tort reform, tort reform. It's like a broken record. People said he's just catering to the Milwaukee lawyers, which he probably is, because they like to spend a lot of money. But
Well, he's not catering to them, he's opposing them.
well, anyway, on tort reform, that's going to help. And I know this caller sounds like he's a little upset with the amount of the awards, and they probably do need to put limits on the amount of awards that are given out, Fred, so that the greedy
Yes.
lawyers don't jump in and take advantage of the situation. But there's one thing that in the health care problem that's even worse than lawyers. And before I tell you that, Fred, I want to ask you a question. What is 1,000 lawyers on the bottom of the ocean?
What is 1,000? Like a grain of sand or a crab?
No, it's a good start.
A good start.
Okay, now, Dr. Schmock,
Yes?
do you have lawyers from where you're from?
No, we do not, Chuck. And I would like to add to what you and Fred had just mentioned to your caller. At one time, your land had the same laws as ours. And for thousands of years, we have not changed our law system. We have what you know as the Ten Commandments. And over the thousands of years, this is all we have needed in our land. Very simplistic and very cost efficient. And as your caller said, the costs that are given back to the people to pay because of lawyers and your adversarial system are most unfair. There is just a handful of people that are becoming very rich off the rest of you. That's all I'd like to comment on there, Chuck.
Well, thank you, Dr. Schmock. Fred, you know, we're going to probably have to have him come back because he's an authority on a lot of issues, and maybe we can find out where exactly he's from, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I was going to tell you about the health care thing, one thing that's more expensive even than lawyers and the doctors and everything is what people do to themselves, Fred. Now, most of these illnesses are self-inflicted. The alcoholism, the drug addiction, the overeating, the poisons they eat like the refined sugars. These are what's destroying people more than anything else. They're doing it to themselves, Fred, with their unhealthy habits of eating and living. And, of course, that spills over into innocent people. Then when a drunk out there on a Friday night wrecks his car into you, and kills you and him or maims you and kills himself or whatever. These are self-inflicted injuries, and hundreds of thousands of people die every year just from one self-inflicted wound, and that is tobacco, Fred. And yet, right here in this state, WHEDA, Wisconsin Housing and Urban Development, or wherever it is, they make loans to farmers and to people to build houses and build businesses. WHEDA has a loan program for tobacco farmers. And also, Philip Morris and the other companies, how many dollars does the state retirement investment funds of this state of Wisconsin, how many dollars do they invest in buying stock in RJR Nabisco and Philip Morris and those companies, Fred? How much? If they're spending one dime, they need to divest themselves. Because on one hand, you'll see TV commercials in the state of Wisconsin that say don't smoke. On the other hand, they're making loans for people to grow tobacco, and they're investing in tobacco companies. Doesn't add up, Fred. So I think, I thought we had a call. Did Roy say we had a call?
I think so.
Let's see.
One.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I really like that Dr. Smock idea for your show. What do you get his PhD in?
We're still trying to find out exactly from what country he's from, and
Country.
if he's a legal alien, we want to make sure we.
Well, if he's an illegal alien, get him out of here.
Well, we're going to find that out before the next show because he seems to know a little bit about.
I don't want any of those imports in here.
He seems to know a little bit about a little. So, Dr. Spock, you heard the question exactly. What's the answer?
What was your question, Chuck?
What was the question again, caller? I guess we lost him, Fred. All right, Fred. Now, I've got an idea who this guy is, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
I think listening to him now about the GATT thing and all that, you know, Ross Perot has been talking about starting a third party. You ever think that this guy's a front man for the Ross Perot movement?
I don't know. You know, we certainly need something here in this country and get rid of some of those political con men that we had. Now, we did get rid of some of them in this past election day, but we need to get rid of more of them.
Well, you know, Ross Perot's love affair with the Republican Party sure was short.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to break off the engagement even before they go on the honeymoon in January. He says if they pass GATT, he's going to start a third party and get in front of it, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
With 2 years and hundreds of millions of dollars, he could do some damage and he could deny the presidency to the Republicans in '96. You ever think of that?
Yes.
He probably can't win it, but if he gets anything over 15% of the vote, he could deny the Republicans. Of course, we don't really, the way I look at it, Fred, there's not really a Republican out there that deserves to be president right now.
Well, I like Pat Buchanan, to be very frank with you.
Yeah, but he's in the wrong party.
Well, I don't care what party you're in. If you get elected, it may be the right party for
I hate to tell you, Fred, but the socialists and the left-wingers are moving in and taking over the Republican Party. And they're not going to put somebody like Pat Buchanan in there.
I think what we have one party, one big tent party that has been a big tent party for a number of years, and that's the Democratic Party. It is the party of the feminists, the homosexuals, the abortionists, and everything. We don't need two parties of the same type.
You know, I think what the unions ought to do, Fred, is dump that bunch and start a new Democratic Party and go back to their roots back in the 50s and get back to a decent party and dump all them left-wing radicals. I've had a lot of Democrats who come back home.
You know what you have to do? You have to go back to before Roosevelt's time, because they began to take over when Roosevelt came into power. And first he became the governor of New York State and then went on to become the president. And they purged the regular Democrats out of there, the good patriotic Democrats who loved God, who loved our country, loved their families. They purged them out of the party. They don't want those people in the party. Now, in some areas, it took a little longer to get
Okay, well, thanks, Fred.
that.
Well, you know, Dr. Schmock, we're going to ask you the big question next week. Where'd you get your degree? You don't answer it this week, but we'll find out that question on next week's show right here on the Cow Report, 9 p.m. next Monday night. Thanks a lot for reviewing, and we'll see you again in 1 week. Thanks to Roy Rogers Hoff and Joel Dupree and the staff here at Public Access and the beautiful L.A. Phillips Memorial Library staff, and we'll see you again. Good afternoon.
Now, do you want to appear?